So I don't even live in your country if you're watching from the US. And it should be a reality TV show where the title is, "We're not a democracy, but let's pretend that we are." So I don't know, but I had trouble sleeping last night. I went to bed expecting Trump to be the clear winner, and my video kind of around the time that it looked like that, I was sort of indicating that I was concerned about how people can manage to vote for somebody like that, although there is no real alternative to him either. And I've talked about Joe Biden on numerous occasions, that he's a Republican and he's appealing to Republicans, and he is, as somebody described him as a sort of a half-dead corpse, really, who has very little promise to the American people. He has promise for corporations and the 1%. So anyway, there was no choice really, except one was an overt fascist, and the other one probably a crypto-fascist. And there you go. That's the pretense of democracy that U.S. citizens have at this point. So I just wanted to say that I really feel for you, because I think it's a terrible thing, this tug of war on the corpse of the American people, basically, by this oligarchic duopoly, who are basically telling major lies constantly to the American public, Trump more so. And the media isn't helping, because they're reinforcing those lies or inventing them themselves, the corporate media. So how on earth can anybody know what the hell's going on if you're not tapped into real left journalism, the kinds that I mention on this my site, which I promote fairly heavily, because they're really, really important today. If we want to have any kind of democracy whatsoever, any kind, we have to have a healthy fourth estate, and we don't. So I just wanted to say, firstly, before I introduce a couple of items that I would really like you to check out, that if I feel this way and I don't live in the United States, if I feel sort of anxiety-ridden, and which I did last night in particular, but often I do, about the shenanigans that are going on in the United States with the duopoly. If I feel that way, I just can only imagine how it must be that you live in that country and you have family and children, and you have to be concerned. If you get sick, how are you going to pay for that, and all of that kind of thing. Which leads me to share something that I saw from the Empire Files this morning. They have a live stream, and if you're not already aware of them, it's a fantastic leftist journalist program that does incredible analysis. You probably won't see analysis like it, really. They tend to sort of think of things that I certainly wouldn't think of, and I don't know enough about. For example, elections, or there's a number of things I don't know much about. And so they're a great education. And they also give this perspective, which can, it's a real analysis and an overall perspective that is incredibly beneficial in a time where we are propagandized to the hilt, like my own country here. We are so propagandized here. People have no idea, most people have no idea what's going on in the United States, and how much we are influenced by the United States, how much meddling goes on in Australia due to the United States, how much meddling goes on overseas and countries destroyed, and we're dragged into those imperialist wars. Here's Aoife. He's wearing his Bird Be Safe collar. No, we don't like it to dress up our cats. He likes to sit in my lap when I do these vids. So we're so propagandized here, and we're being dragged into all these imperialist wars. Happily, though, because we have here in Australia an authoritarian wannabe government. But we have to have a healthy fourth estate, and there's a number of shows that I mention on this channel, Faint Signals from Vega, who are really great at analysis and are essential for us to have a clue what's going on. And one of them is the Empire Files, and they're going to be doing more content on their channel, youtube.com//empire, EMPIRE files, FILES. They also have a Patreon account, patreon.com/Empire Files, and they're viewer funded, so it's essential that we support them. I didn't mean to do a sort of particular promotion of them, but right in this particular video. But since I'm going to start, I regularly mention them. We have to know what's going on, with these politicians and the direction and all of that, and the obfuscation and the lies, etc., before we're able to organize. So anyway, the Empire Files did a live stream this morning. They did a live stream a couple of days ago. So they're doing regular content. So please subscribe to their YouTube. That will help them grow, and also hit the like button and comment and all of that. And that helps with the algorithms. It helps push their channel out, which is being really heavily censored because of the kind of content they do, which is anti-imperialist. They were talking today about the demographics and how interesting they were in relation to who was voting for Trump. And I mentioned that in my last video about the increase in black male voters voting for Trump, the increase in Latinx voters voting for Trump. There was a slight increase with women voting for Trump, and a lessening of a few points down of white men not voting for Trump, which is very interesting. And they give an analysis of why that would be in this particular live stream this morning. And I'm not going to play it. I'd prefer people go and have a look at it. And I'll leave a link in the information section of this video, and also in the live chat. So please check it out. It's very interesting. Just to sort of make a note that Biden basically snubbed Latinx voters, really, and basically told them they may as well go and vote for Trump if they're interested in certain issues. He basically ignored the Latinx vote, and it showed in the results, in the election results. And really and truly, at this time when I'm recording this, he hasn't declared victory, but Biden is looking as if he will get through. I still don't believe that Trump isn't going to do something, that it's not going to end up in the Supreme Court, and that his recent appointment, Amy Coney Barrett, who I believe was put there for this very reason, is possibly going to somehow interfere. The Supreme Court is going to interfere in this election result, because Trump is suing various, I think he's suing the swing states at this particular election, and making out as if these ballots are fraudulent, when they were told, the various states were told not to count the mail-in ballots until the election was finished, the day of the election. And now Trump is making out that these ballots are fraudulent, because why suddenly this swing to Biden? Well, that's one of the reasons, because Democratic voters tend to, they believe in the COVID pandemic, and so they don't want to turn up at polling stations during a pandemic. So they mailed in their ballot. And Trump told the states that not to count them, and now he's making out as if suddenly all these influx of Biden ballots, where people have voted for Biden, that somehow that's fraudulent and they're not real. So he's actually set it up this way, knowing that he could say something like that, like, oh, this irregularity, why have we got all these mail-in ballots that happen to be voting for Biden? He set it up like that. So, it's so deceptive and disgusting. This duopoly has no respect whatsoever for any kind of democracy, and for all the pointing fingers at Venezuela and Bolivia, who, by the way, Venezuela has completely transparent elections, according to some, the best in the world. And here they are, the US empire is always saying things about other countries that really are really about themselves. And look at what the Democratic Party did to Bernie Sanders twice. Speaking of, not bothering to count votes, sabotaging Bernie Sanders twice, and he let them. That's just one of the many things. The Democratic Party is into voter suppression as much as the GOP. All of that. So it's just a big joke. They have contempt for democracy, the Democratic Party. They're just a corporation, really, a private corporation. They have contempt for democracy, and so does the GOP. And that's what US citizens have to deal with. It's just appalling. So anyway, about this, so the Latinx vote could have been much higher if Biden hadn't had contempt for that particular. And it's a multifaceted group. It's not some big monolith the Latinx vote isn't some big monolith. There's all kinds of different Latinx voters, just like there's all kinds of different black voters, black male voters, who some are conservative. But Biden treats them like some kind of monolith, and they certainly treated the Latinx vote that way, and it really paid for it. Look, the fact that he couldn't beat a neo-fascist who was basically, through his complete and intentional incompetence, has basically, caused the deaths of almost 250,000 people and an economic collapse in a pandemic. He couldn't manage to. He's just probably going to manage to eke through and win Biden. Just eke through, really, which is incredible. Doesn't that say a lot? That he couldn't beat this sideshow of a neo-fascist who's just so crass. He couldn't manage to beat that guy in any real way. And it's just by complete luck, really, that people have been voting against Trump and for him, basically. I'd say most people have been holding their nose because he's completely uninspiring. And even if he were inspiring, even if he was like Obama, ultimately that party is just a corporate-owned warmongering party, and it deserves to implode along with the GOP. It's a disgusting mess, basically. I wouldn't be being honest if I said that I didn't think this is a better outcome, and that means if Trump doesn't end up stealing back and through completely corrupt means taking it to the Supreme Court somehow, and then claiming that he won because of fraudulent voting or whatever. If he doesn't end up doing that, which I think is on the cards, he'll try and do that if he can. But if he doesn't and Biden wins, then I have to say I'd be glad to see the back of Donald Trump, because fighting a neo-fascist or a full-on fascist is much harder than fighting an imperialist warmonger who basically is a Republican, who is a crypto-fascist too. But it's much harder, I think, to fight. It's much harder to fight a full-on fascist than it is to, say, fight the alternative, which is not much better, but it's not as bad. I don't think so anyway. He'll do a lot of awful things when he's in office, Biden. He really will. He's going to probably try again to invade Venezuela. He's going to do all the awful things that Trump, probably he'll choose a different country to Trump. He may not want to invade Iran like Trump would want to do, but he'll do all the awful things that Obama was doing. And, but I have to say there is a certain amount of relief if he doesn't get back in. Apart from the fact that I'm so sick and tired of hearing about him. I mean, I hadn't been paying attention to him for most of that 3 years, but I've been paying attention to him in the last year and a half, and I'm utterly sick of him. I'm sure you are, but utterly sick of. I'm sick of his tweeting. I'm sick of his disgusting comments. I'm sick of hearing about him. I'm sick of the propaganda about him, the Russiagate stuff, and then whatever else they would have dragged up during. If he does win the next 4 years, it'll probably be China interfered in the election, or Russia, or Iran, or a third party, whatever the hell. It'll be something. And Rachel Maddow will be rubbing her hands together if he's here for another 4 years. The Russiagate thing was a disgrace, and I'm just so sick of him. But anyway, enough about him. So hopefully that we'll see the back of him. I'd like to put him on a boat and push him out to sea. Seriously, he's awful, and he's caused so many deaths and so much suffering for migrants and all of that, for Muslims. The list goes on. So, as the Party for Socialism and Liberation said, go and join them, and let's organize. Let's not miss a beat in organizing against the dreadfulness that is this duopoly, the dreadfulness that is the U.S. empire that needs to fall for there to be any chance at any kind of peace on the planet. So I'll play this little excerpt by the Empire Files. It's just about Medicare for all, basically. And it shows how many people, including Republicans, want Medicare for all. And how this duopoly, despite the fact that there was a Yale study that came out around the time of Bernie Sanders when he was campaigning. It was about, 6 months ago now. It basically said the US could save $450 billion a year and could save an extra 70,000 lives. 70,000 lives a year if Medicare for all were brought in. That's how much it could save. And then just think of all the lives. Think of all the stress and the suicides that it could prevent. the suicides it could prevent and all of that, the bankruptcy and all of that. No person on the planet should have to deal with not being able to afford to look after their health or the health of their children or whatever. No one. And sadly, Joe Biden was saying things like everybody should be able to get affordable health care. Affordable health care should be a right. That's the nonsense these neoliberal, corporate-owned politicians keep putting out. They're both the same, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Affordable health care is a right. What a load of nonsense. If it's a right, then it's supposed to be free. And the US needs to join the rest of the Western world, which mostly has mostly free healthcare. You can't call yourself some great country if people are going bankrupt when they break their arm and they have to have surgery or something like that, or small things, they go to the emergency room and then they can't afford it and they end up it's nuts. So anyway, I'll play this excerpt, and I might share a little bit of the thing that the Empire Files said about the Latinx vote. I'll just direct you probably to the actual live stream link that they gave this morning, but you'll probably have to check it out fairly soon because they put they have a certain limited time where it's available to the public, the live streams, and then you have to be a Patreon subscriber, which I think is fair enough since they are viewer funded, and if they don't get any funds from viewers, then they can't really do much in the way of content. I mean, people can't live on fresh air. Thanks for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals for Vega. I hope that you are feeling less stressed a little bit. It's no picnic what's happening right now at all. But at least maybe this fascist is going to be out on his ear, and then you can deal with the crypto fascists. Isn't that fun?
Joe Biden is a walking corpse. The fact that people actually thought that he was going to flip Florida is bizarre.
And especially because it was possible for Biden to flip Texas and Florida. So that's why they called it in play. But it was only possible with overwhelming support from the Latino community. Mm-hmm. And the Biden campaign officially said they do not consider Latinos part of their path to victory. And there's that famous video of Biden confronted by immigrant rights activist who asked him about deportations, and Biden says, "Go vote for Trump then," which is in effect what happened to a large degree. But there was not even an attempt to win that demographic. And in Florida, which has a lot of Latino voters in it, and progressive and Democratic-leaning Latino voters, the Biden campaign acted like the only Latinos that existed in Florida were right-wing Cubans in Miami, now who overwhelmingly supported Trump. If Latinos excluding Cubans voted for Biden overwhelmingly in Florida, but the fact that they just focused on the right-wing Cuban community was just kind of insulting to the community, I believe. And, it's now said that it was decided by the Cubans in Miami that turned it for Trump. And so this group that Biden focused so heavily on trying to win over just completely failed, and it backfired on him while neglecting the demographic that could have won him Florida. But it's almost irrelevant now what happened there.
No, I think it is relevant because Biden's campaign actually said early on that they didn't consider Latinos part of their path to victory. Imagine that, actually thinking that one of the largest voting blocs in the entire country is just not necessary. And I think it just shows the hubris and arrogance of the Democratic Party, because even if Biden ekes out a win here, which we're going to go over the possibility of that and the probability of him winning, but even if he does win, it is by such minute margins that it really is an overall indictment on how abysmal of a failure the Democratic Party is, that in the midst of an economic recession and deadly pandemic, that you can't even have a crushing blow to this fucking guy, Donald Trump. Are you kidding me? After 4 years. So let's talk really quickly about the Latino vote, because I think this says a lot, that Trump ran not only his campaign on xenophobia and anti-immigrant rhetoric, he has ramped up that rhetoric, and he's been super anti-Mexican, anti-Latino during his entire presidency. So why is it, Mike, that he did better this year with every single race and gender except white men? Imagine that. From 2016, white men went down 5 points. White women actually increased 2 points. Black men increased 4 points. Black women increased 4 points. Latino men +3. Latino women +3. And you look at somewhere like Zapata County, which is just north of the Rio Grande Valley, right at the border, 53% to 47%. So that's how much he increased, 6 points from 2016. And you look at Clinton, she was up 33 points from where Biden was this time, and Obama 43 points. I mean, what in the hell happened here, Mike? How is it possible that you could see such a discrepancy there when Trump is such a racist, nakedly so?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Democratic Party sees the Black community and Latino community as both monoliths. That is a one united political interest. And if Trump is an anti-Latino racist, then of course all Latinos are going to go out and vote for Biden. But of course, it's much more complex than that. There are right-wing Latino voters, right-wing Black voters. Of course, they're in the minority, but they exist. And when you have that combination of Trump actually on an economic basis, trying to reach out to those communities. He even unleashed this plan for Black America right before the election. He was actually proposing things that were trying to win over of sectors of the populations that could be won over, while Biden was just running on, well, Trump is bad, so it wasn't offering anything. And so, Trump was able to get a little more turnout in those communities, while Biden, really didn't. So it's, I don't think it's surprising.
Yeah, there was no working class program. There was no policies provided or offered to the people who are suffering during the pandemic. And when it comes to this monolith that Biden just thought would be a turnout machine for him just because of how Trump is bad and racist, it really backfired. I think this really is exemplary when you look at something like the debate, for example, and you look at the fact that at this point, Obama still deported more people than Trump, believe it or not. But for example, when Trump smartly called out Biden and said, who built the cages, Joe? Who built the cages? And Biden could not say anything because, in fact, Obama and, his administration is who built the immigrant detention cages. Of course, Trump exacerbated that policy dramatically. But it doesn't take away from that foundation. The foundation of this policy was the Obama-Biden presidency. And you can't say anything to that. You can't. And I think that just the arrogance of just thinking that people of color and these marginalized communities will just come out in droves for you when you are offering absolutely nothing to them. You are literally saying that your campaign is about the character of the country and a return to normalcy. Normalcy to what? The cancer that bred Trump in the first place? Instead of having universal health care, two populist demands that make sense, that are not partisan, shouldn't be partisan during a pandemic, Trump has somehow siphoned that energy into saying he's advocating reopening the economy, liberating these states, liberating these businesses. And it's somehow garnered that energy, right? And made people think that he's trying to get the economy back open. And the only reason that it's doing poorly is because of these Democratic governors who refuse to do what Trump says. Very, very interesting there. And I think, again, failure of the media to not push these issues first and foremost, failure of the Democratic establishment to not push stimulus and healthcare during a goddamn pandemic. $1,200 check once in 6 months. It's absolutely fucking criminal. Look at what Canada is doing. But I was surprised to see that the coronavirus came in third. And another failure of the Democratic Party establishment and the media establishment, 50-50 split down the line of how Trump's doing a good job handling this. Really shows you how far off we are, that half of the country thinks that Trump is actually doing a good job handling the pandemic when we have the most cases and most deaths in the entire world with no end in sight, with no actual assistance or stimulus offered to people in this country. Can you believe that, Mike?
I can. Do you want to talk about the healthcare?
Yeah, talk about
report?
this.
Because this, maybe you should. So there is some interesting information from the exit polls about healthcare. Biden ran on saving the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
Which is an interesting thing to run on when Trump ran on overturning the Affordable Care Act. When Trump was running in 2016, one of his main campaign mantras was, the Affordable Care Act sucks, everyone hates it, and I'm going to overturn Obamacare. And he had a crushing victory in 2016. So to run on restoring the ACA just didn't really make a lot of sense for Biden
a real
to even.
Inspiring thing for
Right.
people.
Yeah, we're going to go back to the way it was when people hated it so much they elected Trump to be the president. Exit polls showed that only 52% of voters think that they should keep the ACA.
Which is crazy.
And that 43% said the Supreme Court should overturn it. So that's not a really, that's a pretty low number of people that basically said they like the Affordable Care Act. Whereas 71% of people said that we should have instead government-run healthcare. So 71%, and this is a Fox News exit poll, 71% of voters said that they think we should switch to a public option or Medicare for all, basically. And so the idea that this was like a wedge issue, and so, if a candidate was running on Medicare for all and 71% say they want Medicare for all or something similar, you can see how the election could have been different. I mean, it's similar in Florida where 75% of people voted to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And a large percentage of those people who voted for that also voted for Trump. So you had a large block of voters that said, we want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and I'm also going to cast my vote for Trump. And so that says something about the messaging of the campaigns and the programs that they're offering and so forth. People can be for Medicare for all, for raising the minimum wage, but still be against Biden. And so when you don't run on issues, you end up people choose issues on down ballot things, but then fall into just choosing which personality they prefer, because neither of them are really offering the issues that they care about.
And these issues have such widespread appeal, and it's directly because of his donors, right? Joe Biden's donors, as Mike pointed out, this is who he is. It's not that he doesn't, he could have obviously adopted Medicare for all if he wanted to win the election, right? That was a very popular demand, even among conservatives and Republicans. But I think it shows you that it doesn't matter what the popular will is. If you are beholden to corporations and donors, you are just going to do whatever they want you to do. And that is Wall Street and defense contractors and healthcare executives that were funding Joe Biden's super PAC. And that's exactly who he was. The ACA was a muddled mess, and it basically mandates people to buy into the healthcare industry. Who wants to do that when people are racked with debt and suffering? Again, 8 million more people have fallen into poverty during the pandemic than existed before. And there were already millions of people, tens of millions of people living paycheck to paycheck in this country.